Hello and welcome! This is Beriathan of the Citadel Guard of Gondor, and today is Tolkien Reading Day. It's been a while since my last video for Tolkien Reading Day, but I wanted to join this year's celebration and hopefully contribute to the conversation in a meaningful way. This year's theme is Unlikely Heroes. A tricky one, at least for me, because there are only a handful of characters I could think of that fit into this category, and I'm sure they are the same characters everyone thinks of first. Bilbo, Frodo, Sam, basically any hobbit. Ordinary individuals suddenly thrust into a conflict far greater than themselves, and who end up saving the day despite their fears and doubts. At first sight, nobody would expect any of those characters to be a hero, but then circumstances force them to be brave and to make sacrifices no matter the cost, regardless of their physical or metaphorical stature. This is one of the central themes in Lord of the Rings, how even the smallest and simplest of folks discover their courage and do the unexpected when they have something worth fighting for. By contrast, the elves and men of Middle-earth, for the most part, fit a more traditional mold, warriors who have trained for years and who were raised on the core values of what a hero is: fighting evil and protecting the weak, defending the ideals of good and love, leaders who are unafraid to enter the fray and pay the cost of doing what is right. Fingolfin, Glorfindel, Hurin, Elendil, the list goes on. So, since at first sight my choices seemed very limited, I decided first to ask what makes a character an unlikely hero to begin with, and why this theme is so important that it merits its own Tolkien Reading Day. And I think what is important is not the hero itself, but rather what happens when someone does something heroic at the most unexpected of times. In his essay on fairy stories, Tolkien discusses the effect caused by these kinds of unlikely turns of events and why it is essential to fantasy. But the consolation of fairy tales has another aspect than the imaginative satisfaction of ancient desires. Far more important is the consolation of the happy ending. Almost I would venture to assert that all complete fairy stories must have it. At least I would say that tragedy is the true form of drama, its highest function, but the opposite is true of fairy story. Since we do not appear to possess a word that expresses this opposite, I will call it eucatastrophe. The eucatastrophic tale is the true form of fairy tale and its highest function. The consolation of fairy stories, the joy of the happy ending, or more correctly of the good catastrophe, the sudden joyous turn, for there is no true end to any fairy tale. This joy, which is one of the things which fairy stories can produce supremely well, is not essentially escapist nor fugitive. In its fairy tale or otherworld setting, it is a sudden and miraculous grace, never to be counted on to recur. It does not deny the existence of this catastrophe, of sorrow and failure. The possibility of this is necessary to the joy of deliverance. It denies, in the face of much evidence if you will, universal final defeat, and insofar is Evangelium, giving a fleeting glimpse of joy, joy beyond the walls of the world, poignant as grief. It is the mark of a good fairy story, of the higher or more complete kind, that however wild its events, however fantastic or terrible the adventures, it can give to child or man that hears it, when the turn comes, a catch of the breath, a beat and lifting of the heart, near to, or indeed accompanied by, tears, as keen as that given by any form of literary art, and having a peculiar quality. Even modern fairy stories can produce this effect sometimes. It is not an easy thing to do. It depends on the whole story, which is the setting of the turn, and yet it reflects a glory backwards. A tale that in any measure succeeds in this point has not wholly failed, whatever flaws it may possess, and whatever mixture or confusion of purpose. In such stories, when the sudden turn comes, we get a piercing glimpse of joy and heart's desire that for a moment passes outside the frame, rents indeed the very web of story, and lets a gleam come through. The peculiar quality of the joy in successful fantasy can thus be explained as a sudden glimpse of the underlying reality or truth. It is not only a consolation for the sorrow of this world, but a satisfaction and an answer to that question: is it true? The answer to this question that I gave at first was, quite rightly, if you have built your little world well, yes, it is true in that world. That is enough for the artist or the artist part of the artist. So, the importance of unlikely heroes is that through them and their actions, the eucatastrophe can happen. These unlikely heroes give us, or remind us of, that joy, that promise of the happy ending. And we want that happy ending. We want evil to be defeated and good to overcome impossible odds, and we feel identified with those characters who can accomplish this goal, even if they don't seem to be very remarkable at first. We see ourselves in those characters and they give us an ideal to aspire to. That means that a hero is unlikely not because of who they are, but because of the extent of the evil opposing them and the time and scope of their actions against such evil. The more desperate the situation is, the more impossible the odds, the more unlikely it is for anyone to succeed. But when the hero succeeds and fulfills the promise of the happy ending, our joy is just as big as the mountain the hero climbed and as big as the hero who saved us. By volunteering to take the ring to Mordor, Frodo is an unlikely hero, but so is Earendil braving the journey to Valinor when it seemed Morgoth's triumph was inevitable, or Boromir protecting the hobbits after he tried to take the ring from Frodo, or Gandalf coming back at the turn of the tide to complete his mission, or Theoden and the Rohirrim charging against the armies of Mordor at the Pelennor Fields, or the self-sacrifice of Aragorn and the captains of the West at the Black Gate. But we need not only to talk about those big and epic events, because we can also find this glimpse of joy in quieter, more private episodes that are just as poignant. Bilbo sparing Gollum's life in the dark where nobody sees him, Fatty Bolger escaping Crick Hollow at night to alert his fellow hobbits of the presence of the enemy, Faramir refusing to take the ring at Hen Anun, Luthien and then Arwen giving up immortal life for love, or Sam watching a single bright star in the skies of Mordor in a moment that beautifully sums up the promise of the eucatastrophe. Frodo sighed and was asleep almost before the words were spoken. Sam struggled with his own weariness, and he took Frodo's hand, and there he sat silent till deep night fell. Then at last, to keep himself awake, he crawled from the hiding place and looked out. The land seemed full of creaking and cracking and sly noises, but there was no sound of voice or of foot. Far above the Efelduath in the west, the night sky was still dim and pale. There, peeping among the cloud rack above a dark tor high up in the mountains, Sam saw a white star twinkle for a while. The beauty of it smote his heart as he looked up out of the forsaken land, and hope returned to him. For like a shaft clear and cold, the thought pierced him that in the end the shadow was only a small and passing thing. There was light and high beauty forever beyond its reach. That is what an unlikely hero is. Anyone willing to do what is right in the name of good, even at their own expense. Anyone willing to step in even when everything seems lost, and through great sacrifice turns the tables and stops evil at the last minute. An unlikely hero can be any one of us, for, as Tolkien himself said in his essay and then repeated in The Two Towers, the great tales never end. People just enter and live the story when their part in it is completed. No sir, of course not. Beren now he never thought he was going to get that Silmaril from the Iron Crown in Thangorodrim, and yet he did, and that was a worse place and a blacker danger than ours. But that's a long tale of course, and goes on past the happiness and into grief and beyond it. And the Silmaril went on and came to Earendil. And why, sir? I never thought of that before. You've got some of the light of it in that star glass that the lady gave you. Why, to think of it, we're in the same tale still. It's going on. Don't the great tales never end? No, they never end as tales, said Frodo. But the people in them come and go when their parts ended. Our part will end later, or sooner. Our own part in the story may not be over yet. We must stay strong, even despite seemingly unsurmountable odds, and stay true to our ideals and to goodness and truth, that we may also be the hero for somebody else. An unlikely one, not because we are not capable of being heroic, but because we are when nobody expects it, and in doing so, give somebody else that glimpse of joy that reminds them that there is still a happy ending to be had at the end of the road, because, as Sam Gamgee said,
there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for.
I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you had an amazing Tolkien reading day. Moments like these remind us why the professor's work has stood the test of time, and why his words bring so many of us together and fill our hearts with hope. In doing so, Professor Tolkien has also been the unlikely hero for many of us. I know he has been for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.